Lighthouse, let's jump back into Proverbs for our daily devotions. I hope you have a good place to sit. I hope you have a good place to think. I hope this isn't just consuming a little message, but rather this is a little bit of me and you and a lot of you and God. Pray before you open the scriptures. Think about it, meditate on it day and night. Have it be something that's going around in your head all the time, and know that I love you, and I hope your head's up, your chin's up, you're remaining encouraged, and find some encouragement in the Word of God today. So we left off at Proverbs 3 verse 8. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. We talked about how organizing our whole life around godly wisdom, around God himself, is the way to refreshment, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. The heart is like the center of you, not just your emotional center, but the core of you, like your brain, your guts, your heart, all of that stuff. And that if we put our trust, we organize our behavior around God with everything we've got, that will result in healing to your flesh and refreshment for your bones. Well, before we read today's proverb, I'm kind of compelled to remind you what the Proverbs are. The Proverbs are great advice. The Proverbs are not promises. And that's important when we think about the proverb we read yesterday. You go, man, I trusted God and I don't feel refreshed. I trusted God and I still feel anxiety or stress or whatever. Yeah, the Proverbs are not promises. God's not a vending machine. This is a relationship you have with God, and this is a relationship you have with the scriptures, and the world is evil and dark. I wonder if the picture you might have of the Proverbs would be you sitting with somebody on a porch. I almost said a back porch, maybe like a back porch with some land out, and it's sun setting, and there's just a friendship there, and you really trust this person. This is a man or woman that just has lived life well, and there's a rare moment where they're opening up and they're giving great advice. Now, you wouldn't say those are promises. Everything they say must come true or they were a liar. No, you would say, man, if I keep my ears open, if I listen to what this person's saying, my life's going to be a lot better. So with that in mind, here is a proverb of King Solomon. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. Wow. Now I'm a pastor. I work at a local church, right? It'd be pretty tempting to go, so if you give more, God will give you more. That's not what this says. In fact, I think if we're going to understand what's going on here, we have to break down a couple of words. What do we mean by honor? And what do we mean by wealth? Honor the Lord with your wealth. You know, when we went to Afar in Ethiopia, the people we hung out with are camel herders. So if you've ever read about Afar folks, they're usually up north in Ethiopia, and they are salt. I don't know what you do with salt, gatherers, miners. And but we were with the Afar tribe lower in Ethiopia, and they are more south in Ethiopia, and they herd camels. And we were told, hey, don't take a picture of the camels. I thought, oh, okay, why? Camels are awesome. If I had a bunch of camels, well, I would love to have somebody to show them off, have somebody take a picture, and they go, yeah, but this is their livelihood. And so taking a picture of the camels would kind of be like you meeting somebody for the first time and them saying, hey, could you show me your bank statement? Could you show me how much money you have in the bank? Okay, that's a different perspective. I understand then that they don't just view camels as part of whatever. They view that as their wealth. And I think we have to understand that as Solomon goes from preaching to meddling here and says, honor the Lord with your wealth. Look, some people would say, okay, this is telling you that you need to give 10% to a church, which again, we've talked about this. I think it's a mature Christian thing to do, to be generous and give to a local church, and that's all great. But what's going on here, there is a way to do that and have zero adherence to this proverb. This proverb is not, hey, 90% of what you have is for you and 10% of it is for God. No, rather, this is, think about what it means that you have wealth. Sure, you have a paycheck, you have money in your bank, that's fine. But this is a whole life picture. Did you see even Solomon is going to refer to with the first fruits of all your produce. That's not the first fruits of all you produce. That's of all the vegetables you grow, your produce. So he's saying, look, everything in this Hebrew understanding that somebody owned was their wealth. It wasn't just income, and it wasn't just net worth. It was everything that belonged to them. So Solomon is not saying, hey, be sure you give 10%. Solomon is saying, look, we have to change our perspective, and we have to not say big giving is better and little giving is worse or whatever, but rather to say, no, I need to honor God with everything I have. So how do I honor God with my house? How do I honor God with not just my income, but with my car? How do I honor God with my clothing? How do I honor God? What a different perspective this is. But in fact, this takes us back to the original idea of the relationship between man and stuff and man and God. That God made all the stuff, including the animals, and said it's good. And then God made man and said it's very good. And he said, hey, I want you to image me to the world, to all of this stuff, to the material world. I want you to image me to the animals and to the gardens and to the mountains and to the sea and the sky. I want you to govern this in a way that I would govern it. You are my junior partner. You are the one who is in charge of stewarding, caring for, honoring me with everything around you. So Solomon says, look, as you are trusting the Lord with all you've got, don't forget to honor God with your wealth, with everything that you have, not just that you would give some to your local church or to a charity or whatever, which is all fine and good. But that is a small sliver of a bigger worldview kind of earth-shaking perspective that actually says, it's not that I own all this stuff. It's that I am stewarding all this stuff. So God, how do I honor you with the plot of land where I live? How do I make this a welcoming place? How do I make this a lighthouse for the gospel? How do I make this a place where anybody that comes around would not say, wow, those people really honor themselves with everything they have, but rather would say, oh man, the honor of God is everywhere, in their relationships, in their place, in their stuff. It's not minimalism for the sake of minimalism, and it's not extravagance for the sake of extravagance. Rather, the decisions we make in how we steward the material world is all about how do I honor God with the material world that he's given me. So this is just as true if you make a big income or a small income. This is just as true if you own a big house or a small house, if you have a lot of stuff or you don't have very much. The big idea is, with what wealth you have, are you honoring God? So then comes this thing that would be pretty easy to mistake as a promise. It says, so honor God with your wealth and with the first fruits of all you produce. I love the first fruits thing because this would be like somebody who owns a vineyard and there's a fine vintage, right? And the person who owns the vineyard, they weren't maybe out in the fields plowing, and they weren't out in the fields harvesting, and they weren't the ones that put that stomped out the grapes, and they didn't put them in barrels and all that. They were in an administrative role, but the whole thing belonged to them. And so when that first vintage comes out, oh, who gets the first drink of this? Who gets the one who gets to taste the goodness of the land? Well, it's the landowner. And so as we give our first fruits, and I'm going to leave you to figure out what that means. Certainly giving a tithe to your local church is one way to do that. But I'm going to let each family for sure figure out, what does it mean to say, not with the last of what we have, but with the first fruits, how do we honor the landowner? It's this incredible understanding that none of this actually belongs to us. Rather, we steward God's material world. So with every paycheck and every, bit of, again, our stuff and our relationships and the whole thing, that we would say, oh, I want God to have the first benefit. I want to remind myself that I'm stewarding what actually belongs to God. So honor God with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. Now, again, we can take this, if you removed this out and just read it somewhere that wasn't in a list of Proverbs, you might go, oh, this is a promise of God that if I give, and I've heard people teach this and preach this, oh, if I give enough, then I'll always have plenty. I'll always be wealthy. And in fact, if I'm not wealthy, it's just because I'm not giving enough. That's just not what this says. Rather, this is that wise friend on the back porch and saying, do you know what's been the best advice I could give you? It's not just be an expert in your field, although that's important. It's not just, learn to play the stock market, although there's some good wisdom there. But the thing that has made me feel the wealthiest, the thing that has caused the best life for me, has been that I honored God with my wealth. Your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. Man, I've heard it said, and I've said a million times, especially in America, being wealthy, not that hard. Like on the world scale, we have an awful lot in our country. Feeling wealthy, super hard. It's really hard to feel like you have enough. I know almost nobody who, if they had a chance to double their wealth, wouldn't go, yeah, absolutely. No, most of us feel like we're just making it, right? Most of us feel like, oh, yeah, it's not that I don't have enough. I just don't feel wealthy. You want to know the secret to feeling provided for? Is to work hard, but give up on the idea that you are your own provider. Instead, honor the Lord with your wealth and see if you don't feel like your barns are full. Learn to take the first fruits of all of your produce, of everything that you make and all that you have, and honor God with it, and see if that doesn't feel better. See if you don't feel like, the barns feel a little fuller than they did before. Not because I have more necessarily, but because as I honor God, He fills me. What's the motive for how we deal with wealth? How we deal with the stuff we have? How really it breaks down to how we deal with the material world? Is it so that I can best honor myself, have the most stuff, live the coolest life, my kids have the best things, have other people be impressed? Or is my motive, I just want to honor God with my wealth? Have a good day.